Dear church, thanks for tuning in. Today we're going to talk about teamwork. Hello and welcome to the Dear Church podcast. Thank you for tuning in. I'm excited about today's guests because these are the knuckleheads that I get to work with every single day. We're minus one, Aaron Appleby, who is our communications guy. He is remote, so he is in Plano, Texas, so he's not with us. But the rest of you guys are here. Some of you against your will. Some of you are not real happy about it. I know BB and Stephanie are a little bit nervous about being with me today, but thank you guys so much. I'm going to introduce the team. So we got David Lopez, who is our university minister, new to the bunch. He's the rookie. We've got Blake Dozier, who is our youth and family minister. Jake Sledge, who is our involvement minister. We got Stephanie, who is our children's coordinator. And we've got BB, or Brianna Baeza. And we got BB, who is our administrative assistant, right? Yeah, secretary, however you want to call it. So thank you guys for joining me. So we're going to talk a little bit about teamwork. I just thought this might be a good idea. It may bomb, but hopefully not. I thought this might be a good idea to, for our listeners, our viewers to see, kind of what our approach to ministry is as a team, how we do things. I feel like we have the best team ever assembled. And I know I'm biased, but I feel like that. And I think that we have just a lot to bring to the table. And I think there's a lot of other churches that bring a lot to the table as well, that hopefully they'll chime in and, send emails and let us know kind of what they're doing. And we can learn from each other. So thank you guys. So note everybody talk at once, but I want to discuss for a minute what makes a successful team from the church perspective. Obviously it's important that we're all on the same page, reading from the same script. What do you guys see as maybe the key ingredients for our success and, really for any church? Everybody's looking at each other, right?
I'll start us off.
Good deal.
Glad to get to be here. I think a lot of the things that make a successful team are applicable to a wide variety of different workplaces. So in a lot of sense, the church workplace isn't that different.
Right.
We're just applying it in different areas. So, I think one of the things that makes a successful team is everyone understanding both the big picture and the small picture. Okay. So you said reading from the same page. Mm-hmm. We all have to be from the same page, reading from the same page, but we also have to understand our role within that. And so, each of us have very different roles that complement one another. And so, working within that, I think is really important. I also think it's important to have fun when you're at work.
Well, that's not a problem for us.
Yeah, so we definitely have that one down. Maybe the rest we could use some work on. But
And we have a lot of fun, and, in most places, when a Stephanie would show up, you would curtail it a little bit because Stephanie's husband is also one of our elders. Mm-hmm. And you think, well, you gotta dial it back. No, her husband, who is one of our elders, is just as goofy as we are. So we don't have to worry about that.
Well, don't you think a lot of times Christians kind of, I don't know, we act like a bunch of stiffs, and
yep.
We need to have fun.
That's a good way to put it.
We do, and enjoy ourselves. And I think that when you have a staff that works together and has fun, then that kind of carries over and trickles into our ministries and the church and the energy that's there, and that's important.
I'm kind of glad you led with that, because before the cameras got turned on, we were being really goofy and silly and everything, and then they turned on, everybody went, And so the fact that you started there hopefully puts everybody else at ease. Jake's over here acting serious. He's the least serious of the bunch.
I'm the youth minister, so it's my job to be immature and to derail everything.
Absolutely. So, thank you for that, too.
I'll move this away from me.
Well, I was going to say that, let you guys talk, too, but I was going to say, I think what makes our team so good, and there's a lot of things, but one of the things I think makes it so good is you don't want to be the preacher. I don't want to be the youth minister. Jake doesn't want to be the youth minister or the preacher. I don't want his job, and we don't want each other's jobs. We're not vying for each other's jobs. I think it's fine if you're looking to take that next step. You kind of grow out of youth ministry, at least a lot do, and then they take the next step, which is associate or whatever. You guys aren't looking for the next move. You guys are all in it for what you're doing, and you love what you do, and I think that's key too. What were you going to say, David?
Well, I was going to add to this idea of the applicability of the principles that make a successful team, I think, can be stretched to different areas as well, like the things that make a successful family. And I put down 2 here. One is core Christian values.
Yeah.
And core Christian values are a little bit more than common doctrinal beliefs.
Yeah.
Core Christian values are the things that I would consider that dig down deep into the spirit and that you hope to share in a community with individuals, like love, wisdom, kindness. When you have that a part of a team, and we have it here, and it's unique. It's special when you feel that from not just the staff, but throughout the entire leadership. Like you said, talking about Robert and going all the way up to Robert.
Yeah.
When you share these core Christian values, it makes being a part of the team enjoyable.
Yeah.
And the other part is real friendships. And it goes back to this idea of having fun. This idea of intentionally spending time together and genuinely liking each other. I know yesterday was my off day. I didn't show up. But around 10:30, 11, I had a very deep desire to just come to lunch and hang out with you. I really did. And matter of fact, we were going to get those 2 boys out of from what they were doing. And we were going to go, and we said, you know what? I said, let me spend time with my wife and let's hang out and whatnot. But I think those are 2 things that make for a successful team. When you have those core Christian values that we're all trying to maintain with each other, and then we're friends.
Yeah.
Genuine friends, not head preacher, assistant and youth. Like, that's not what this is.
Nope.
You have friends. Each has his or her own role, and I think that those are 2 elements that play a big part.
And you made a very good point. It starts at the top, and our shepherds are really good at cutting loose and having fun and being, low key and take care of business. But it starts there, and we have good relationships with all of them. There's 9 of them, and we're friends with all of them. So that's good too. I like that. And then it's a blessing to get to come to work every day and work with your friends. So there's no jealousy. There's, like I said, there's some overlap in our ministries, but we all understand what we do as distinct and unique in church work, and we're not vying for each other's jobs. I think that's important. What would you say is the ultimate goal of each and every ministry? No matter what ministry it is, whether it's working with our children or, involvement, outreach, youth, what would you say is the ultimate goal for every ministry? Stephanie is avoiding the microphone like a plague.
Pass.
I do not recall.
What we like to say at Oldham Lane is make and grow disciples. That comes from the greatest commandment and the Great Commission. Whether what we say, like we do our fall festival around Halloween time, that sort of thing, and other events. We say the fall festival is not about fall festival. It's about reaching our community, letting them know that we care about them, that we're here, that we're an option for them. My job is not, I deliberately don't run a booth at Fall Festival. There's a lot of troubleshooting I do, but I want to just buzz around and meet people that are visiting and play games with my kids alongside others and things like that, because that's what we're trying to do, is make a connection with our community. Why? Because our goal is to make and grow disciples. So whether it's just something pure kind of fun like that, or we're like collecting books and materials for the Bluebonnet Detention Center or whatever, ultimately that's what we're trying to do, however we go about doing it. And that keeps you focused on, we're not just trying to pop up with programs that someone had an idea, and so you had an idea, so we got to do it, so now we've got all these programs. Everything we do is about that ultimately, and should be. Mm-hmm. And I think that ought to be the deciding factor in how do we do, what do we do, and how do we do it, and how do we know when we continue to do that or stop doing that program based on its effectiveness. Yeah,
we had a gentleman that is all friends of ours that doesn't attend our church, attends another church here in town, but he came out one day and he was talking about, the growth that we've had and how we're doing really well with that. And he said, I can tell you why you're growing. I said, oh, okay. Well, tell me. And he said right here, and he showed us the bulletin. And our bulletin is like a trifold, and on the front it says Make and Grow Disciples, and it has our logo. He said that's why you're going. People walk through the door and they know exactly what y'all are about. You have a clear mission and a clear statement of that mission. And I thought that was a good way to put it, and kind of reiterates what we've been talking about. I know, Stephanie, you work with our children, and I know you have a very clear-cut plan in working with them that, the Making and Growing Disciples, it starts really young. And boy, you've got a lot of kids right now, right? I mean, a whole bunch of little ones. Talk a little bit about your mission with those kids and what you're trying to accomplish.
We're running about 150 kids now, and our goal is to try to create a strong faith in them and knowledge of the Bible, and to try to make learning about the Bible fun, and to try to make them excited to come to Bible class. We have amazing teachers. It's amazing how many teachers step up and volunteer and help us out. And so
that's awesome. Yeah, and they're doing a great job. And I know that you have a lot of activities too. It's not just Bible class. You do a lot of neat things with them, like SOS, which is basically VBS every Wednesday night in the summers. And of course, we do VBS and some other things. It's really neat to see our young people engaged. And one of our elders and your husband, another elder, do Pew Packers every Sunday night, about 10 till 5, and, get all the little kids down there and, go through Bible questions with them, let them sing and all that kind of stuff. That's really neat.
But in every one of those, and the things that Stephanie does, and everybody's a good example, SOS, VBS, of course, Bible class, is there fun? Yes. The kids have a good time? Yes. All of that. But they're learning the Word of God.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that can't get lost in all of this.
And not every church does that.
Yeah.
I mean, VBS is about how cool and awesome and fun can we make it, and on a surface level, that's okay, but is there anything beneath that?
Well, that's a good example, because VBS, I know from Stephanie's viewpoint, is we don't want you to just come and learn the stories. We want you to be in the story. And so, Stephanie, the whole church gets transformed into ancient Egypt or whatever the theme is. And so you're actually, what we had a petting zoo one year and had some camels and stuff, because you're wanting to put the kids in the story, not just to read the story. And I think that's important too.
Make the Bible to life, jump out at them.
Bring it out, yeah. And so, BB, I know you're hesitant to talk. So,
okay.
And very nervous. Yeah, she was nervous. And BB's husband is a deacon at Oldham Lane. And
did we mention how much we love Zenny?
Yes. Can we just talk about Zenny?
We could just talk about Zenny for the rest of the podcast.
If any of you ever met Zenny, you would love Zenny as well. That's her husband. But so, BB, talk a little bit about how you're not just the person that answers phones, or does the bulletin. You're the first contact that many people have with the church, and you do such a good job of, sometimes, well, not sometimes, your job is often a ministry, because people call and just want to talk. They just want somebody to talk to, right? I mean,
yes, they do. And I think it's just an important, just an attribute to have a heart for that, to be able to listen, to be able to genuinely care about what people have to say, what they're going through with their life. I mean, I think, sorry.
No, that's really.
But I think it's just good to have that kind of a servant mentality. I want to be able to do whatever I need to do for the office, for the church. I just want to be there and be willing always to do what needs to be next. And
you are. And I think that's great, because so many people, they don't make that distinction. They don't, understanding, hey, I'm not the person that answers the phone. I'm not the person who just, as a deacon, runs sound. I'm not just the person who makes sure the doors are unlocked. This is making and growing disciples, everything that we do. So how do I get the bigger picture, and how do I involve myself in the bigger picture, no matter what the maybe even menial task, what that means?
When we first started, I said, well, there's a lot of parallels, I guess, between teamwork and secular work and all of that. But I think one of the things that we're kind of uncovering as we talk is this central focus on people.
Yeah.
From our little people all the way up to all the big people and everyone in between. And I mean, everything from the first time the phone is answered to our children's ministry, to our youth, to our university, to our adult classes. I mean, it really is about caring for people and connecting them with the things that matter most. I mean, things of eternal consequence. And each of our ministries has a really important key role in that. And I mean, that's different than the things that drive other organizations.
I agree. Yeah.
And really important.
That's a good. Oh, I'm sorry, Jake.
Well, you mentioned people. It's also what really all of us have to do is we're not running our ministry, so to speak, by ourselves. Every one of us has to, maybe less so for Chris, but there's preacher training camp. There's other things that are happening where you have to do this as well. But every one of us has to bring in volunteers, members of the church, to help pull off what we're doing. And our ministry wouldn't happen if it weren't for the other people engaged who also have a heart to do this.
I agree. And that's a good segue into what I was going to talk about next is the distinction in roles of what we do, but also the overlap. I'll say this. I think a lot of times people look at the church and they see the preacher and he's kind of the figurehead, and so they recognize or they associate the church with whoever the preacher is. But as we all know, and even church members know, there's a whole lot of other things that go on that make a church really, really successful. And not to be too critical, but I've known of churches, I know you have as well, where the preaching may not be up to par necessarily, but the church is booming because of those other factors that are involved. You've got a vibrant youth. You've got, a children's ministry that's knocking it out of the park. The university ministry is just really reaching out, and then all the involvement activities and things of that nature. So it never comes down to just one person, not just the song leader, none of that. So it takes the team to do that. So let's talk a little bit about how we do have distinctions, but there is an overlap with all of us, right? I mean, there's constant emails being sent. What do you think about this? And so we're constantly giving input and taking input about, I know for me, I ask you guys all the time, what do you think about this sermon series? Do we need something that I'm missing? Stephanie and I coordinate the summer series with the SOS program. BB, gets on to me for not sending her my Sunday night lesson, which I do quite often, Yeah, she's really forceful. She's mean. So talk about the overlap a little bit, whether it's university ministry, whatever it is, how our roles all overlap, even though they're distinct. So.
No, go ahead.
Before I get to looking at that question, this idea of community is just so important. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I think any successful church, spiritually successful church, has to take into consideration and make forefront. We go from the Old Testament to the New Testament. Community was vital to the life of God's people. When you have a strong community, there are two things that happen. One is a kind of outreach that happens when people want to be a part of, let's take, for example, children in youth ministry. You get children a part of the community there. Parents, for example, might be on the fringes. They might not even agree with all the teaching that's being done at the church, but through that community and seeing how much it benefits, that can break down so many different social barriers where they then will be open to having discussions about doctrine and about beliefs and about the process of conversion and things like that. Mm-hmm. But the other thing about community is a strong Christian community, which I think we have here at Oldham Lane, can keep the negative effects of the world out. Yeah. Obviously, we're attached to this world. We're here living amongst the world, but we're not supposed to be of the world. And I think one of the strongest defenses against that, being of the world, is having a community that acts almost like a barrier, if you will. Yeah. It can buffet. It can filter out a lot of things that the world and its culture is trying to put into the church and its culture. But going to your question about overlapping, overlapping roles, I know that I've experienced the benefit of being a part of ministers who care about my ministry. When I first got here, y'all already had something set up in place, and y'all made it very clear, look, we're not trying to step on your toes, we're not trying to take over your ministry, but here is A and B, and we think that this will be good for you. We think that it'll be good for the students, and it'll help for a prosperous ministry, a healthy ministry. And guess what? It's been great. For example, the luncheons that we do, I came in adopting luncheons that were already put in place. You know, obviously I had to show up. But that being said, y'all already have things in place that came out of a genuine care, not a control over my ministry, but a genuine care for my ministry. And it's only helped. Being able to bounce ideas off each other and things like that. So
Yeah, we wanted you to come in and kind of have the the ingredients for success, you know, because you were coming in thinking, okay, so what am I going to do to get this off the ground and things like that. I know Blake and Jake had a lot to do with, you know, trying to help you with that, and I think that's great. And you know, we talk about the overlap. I mean, we get together every Monday morning, you know, and we talk and we bounce ideas off, and you know, we think about not just the coming week, but you know, what are we wanting in the future? We've had a lot of those discussions lately because this Sunday we're starting, you know, the 2-service model. Our growth has been great, and so we've had to accommodate for that. So we've talked about a lot of those different things, and you know, of course, COVID has sent us into, you know, chaotic times. And so Stephanie trying to figure out, you know, how are we going to do Bible classes as we start back from COVID, or, you know, how are we going to make all this work? What's too much too soon, and, you know, and all those kind of things, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, as you're asking this question, sorry, hit the mic. My bad. I'm the youth
For
minister.
somebody who talks with their hands,
The
it's gonna be
standards are really low for youth minister, so I'm fine.
you can only go up.
Yeah. I think of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, and, you know, looking at the body and all of the different roles that each member plays. And so, I mean, that applies to the church as a whole. I think it also applies to our ministry staff. I mean, I can think of multiple, I mean, your example of kind of getting you integrated into your ministry is one, but, you know, over this last couple of weeks, we've been working on the database. I mean, Brianna spends a lot of time managing the database. I mean, without that tool in place, our other ministries are crippled in not having the information that we need to contact and work with the people that we need to. And so, I mean, we spent a lot of time with that over the last couple of weeks getting that sorted out. You know, Stephanie and I, we probably end up working together a little more because, I mean, she's kind of handing off her ministry into mine.
Yep.
And I think the longer that you're here, the more that we will discuss the way I'm handing my ministry off into yours, and so on. So, I mean, they mesh together. And so what Stephanie is coordinating as pertains to curriculum matters a lot.
Sure.
And how I'm going to approach things as it comes in, as these kids come into the ministry that I oversee. And I think the same is going to be. So, I mean, you can't separate the ministries from one another. Mm-hmm. They are unique. If I spend all of my time worrying about the second grade class, then I'm not doing youth ministry.
Right.
But we're in a place where I don't have to, because Stephanie takes care of it. She does her job well.
Yes.
You know, and so I feel like doing your job well lets you maintain the distinctness, but working together as a team helps you pass things along and makes things flow smoothly and work the best for the congregation.
I think that's a great point. I know for me, you know, I've been here the longest, I guess, as far as on staff. Mm-hmm. And I know for me, it's really encouraging, and it helps me to relax, to know that I don't have to do everything. Mm-hmm. That's kind of my nature, you know. I don't know if that comes from my coaching background or whatever, but you kind of feel like, you know, everything's got to run smoothly, and if it's not, then you get out of sorts. And, you know, we've got the perfect people seated in the perfect places on the bus, and so therefore I don't have to worry about it all the time. I can go out of town on vacation. Y'all cover for me preaching. Don't have to worry about that at all. In fact, you know, people are getting, you know, probably something better than they are on a regular basis. You know, our children's ministry ministry, don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about, BB taking care of things when I leave, any of us leave the office. It's just really nice to know that every person is in the right spot doing their very best. I think that helps with the overlap and the distinction because, as the preacher, I don't have it all figured out. I think some people think that the preacher should have it all figured out and, he doesn't struggle with the things we struggle with and all that. Nothing could be further from the truth. So it's nice to be able to come in and talk to Blake or Jake or David or Stephanie or BB and say, there's something I'm kind of dealing with right now. And it may not have anything to do with the job, but that's the kind of relationship that we have. And not everybody has that. I realize how blessed I am when you drive to work every morning to a place that you love. And I pray every morning on the drive to work. It takes me 10 minutes to get to work. And that's one of the things to pray for daily is that this is unique. It's a blessing. And I think that someday we're all going to get old and we're going to look back and go, man, that was so much fun. I remember when I was, in my 40s, just, loving life and loving working with the Oldham Lane Church of Christ, So anyway.
I'm just stuck on the fact that it takes you 10 minutes to get to work. How fast are you driving?
Yeah, I'm driving the legal speed limit.
Whatever.
Maybe 5 miles per hour over, but
What
did you say?
Luke guy.
She doesn't talk much. We want to get her on. We want to get her on
I
microphone.
said, I think you took the loop.
Yeah, took the loop. What's also neat about Oldham Lane, I know that Shepherd staff, they look at the hiring process and bringing somebody on staff. And a lot of times you either get input from other congregations or from people that you trust, or you put it online at different university websites, and then you go through a process of bringing somebody in. And aside from David, everybody on our staff was at Oldham Lane.
Well, and you.
And me, yes. Yeah, that's true. I feel like I'm native now. But yes, everybody that has been added to the staff since me is from the congregation. Now, secretary, I think that's a no-brainer. I mean, I think you want somebody from your congregation. But Stephanie, has been with Oldham Lane since the very beginning, right? We were a church plant in the mid-'90s and, from Baker Heights, and so you've been there from the beginning. Jake, has been in Abilene for a while, didn't grow up here, but been here for, 20, 30 years? But came over to Oldham Lane, 10 or 12 years ago, and then we hired him, thought he would be great for this position. We're still working at that, but no, I'm just kidding. No, he is great for that position. Blake grew up at Oldham Lane, and now, went through the youth group and is now, went through the youth group with one of our elders who was the youth minister at the time, and now you're, overseeing that. And of course, David is kind of the odd man out, but, we feel like we did a good job in that hiring process. But it's interesting, and people ask about, how did you put the staff together and how did you get so fortunate and all that? Well, I think, the hiring process has been something that's been really good because we identified people in our congregation that could do the work and said, let's pay them, more than what they make in their secular job, and let's bring them on board. And it's really proven to be successful, right? You got any commentary to add to that? I mean, I think it's really worked out well.
I think that's ideal because you're bringing somebody in who knows the church, the members know them. It helps reduce the uncertainty curve, the level of uncertainty of can they do it, what's their their work ethic, or do they have the ability to do it? Do they have the heart to do it? If they're already serving in an area, they've already been entrusted with some things, already have the trust, credibility of the people, we've already seen their skill set, then that reduces a lot of uncertainty. And that's the risk in any kind of hire is the high level of uncertainty. And that's why, like with David, we spent a lot of time with him.
A lot of time.
Beforehand. Yeah. Several video conference calls, phone calls, things like that.
We investigated behind his back. We called a lot of people.
Yeah.
We were concerned about that.
I was really tired of talking about David by the time we hired him.
But we were concerned because this was so good, and we knew what we were getting on the front end. You don't know somebody till you truly work with them.
Well, and that's important, but even more important is the ministry that he would be doing.
Yeah.
Was so important. We needed the right person. And so we had, I don't know how many, but we had a large number of applicants. And in any pool of applicants, some you look at and some you don't. But there was people to choose from, and he floated to the top. But we spent a lot of time working on that because you've got to reduce that uncertainty, because we've got to hit the ground running and do our mission. Why are we doing what we're doing? Make and grow disciples. So we need a person who can do that.
Yeah.
And so I think another thing that I think works well is the way the elders and us have done this together. We work real carefully to say, the elders wanted us to identify what's a profile for this ministry, for that minister. What does that look like? We talked to other campus ministers.
Yes.
So we crafted this job description and profile of who we're looking for, what their skill set would be, that sort of thing, what they would do. And that was, this was a year's worth of work to get to this point.
Yeah.
And the elders were the elders. That was never a question in our mind, but they allowed us to, y'all go do the work to find the people, to find the applicant, and you bring us one or two or three. Let's narrow it down to that. And so y'all got to vet all of them. By the time those one or two or three come to us, basically any of those could have done it.
Yes.
And then, of course, they do their own process of that. So I think the partnership between the elders, it wasn't one elder that said, I'm going to do this, and they're working their job, and they don't really, are not really tuned into what that ministry needs or whatever, or even how to go about searching for the minister. So I really appreciated the process that we were able to go through.
Yeah, me too. And of course,
it was different with those of us maybe that were internal, but
sure.
I think we set a good precedent.
Then ultimately what put David over the edge is because he played for the Razorbacks, and I'm a huge Razorback fan, being from Arkansas. So ultimately, more than truth or anything, is the fact that he played for the Razorbacks, right? No, actually, that's not. That did help you, though.
I want to talk a little bit, or speak a little bit to the idea of hiring from within, because that has worked well for us, but it's not without its scary side and its challenges. You know someone, but you're also taking a pretty big risk when you now take someone who has been a volunteer member of a church and make their livelihood from the church.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough having that relationship, and there's some risk there.
Yeah.
And there's also, Stephanie watched me grow up. So, all
that's another episode.
These elders, that's another episode.
I still let my kids be in your
yeah,
youth.
Yes.
These elders know the sins of my youth, and they've still allowed me to work with our children. And so I think it's a testament to the special place that Oldham Lane is.
I agree.
I don't know that every church can swing that.
Yeah.
We have a congregation full of grace and forgiveness and patience. But I think we've hired well, but I think we also have a leadership that has really demonstrated, I don't know how to put it into words, but a recognition of the human side of the people that are working here, and has partnered with us and worked with us, and a congregation that has done the same. We haven't been a congregation that has, lorded over, put someone in this role and then, switched from being family to boss. Maybe that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
we are family first.
Yeah.
And that's special that we get to work with family first.
Yes.
Anyway.
That's a very good point. Yeah, I was just on the phone with one of our elders a while ago because it's his birthday today, and I called him, and every time I get off the phone with him, he says, I love you. That's a special thing. I go back to this whole idea, and I think about BB. And by the way, we call her BB because your wife is Brianna also.
It's very
confusing. So instead of calling her Brianna, since
Brianna with one N.
Yeah, but her name's Brianna Baeza, so we call her BB, and that way we don't get confused. Anyway, when you go to hire a secretary, there are plenty of people in a congregation our size who can answer a phone, who can do Alexio, who can do the database, who can do a bulletin, who has those kind of skills, and truthfully, with the technology the way it is today, those skills are getting harder and harder to master. But there are people that you can find that can do that. But do they have a heart for people? And I think even in the role of secretary, that is a ministry. And do you have a heart for that? And so when we were thinking about candidates who could do that job, we were thinking about, yeah, they would be good at the technical side of it and all that, but do they have a heart for people? You know, I mean, are they gruff and rough when they answer the phone, or, you know, I mean, and I know that there are people, I know that there are, and if you know anything about BB, you know that's about as far from her as, yeah. But if you have, there are people that actually call BB during work hours just because they want to talk, because they want to listen to her voice, and she's so calming and soothing, and that is highly important. That what you said a while ago is making sure that I see my job as a ministry and not just as, you know, entering data and things of that nature. So let's talk about this. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to jump in and say it was interesting that when I was down here trying out for the college minister position, there were two names that got brought up quite often.
Yeah.
Stephanie and BB.
Yeah.
And I remember, for example, we went to, I just kept hearing, oh, Stephanie, she does this, she does that. And I don't know Stephanie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, she must be awesome. And then we went to her, I guess her inventory room, if you will.
Yeah. The Holy of Holies.
Yeah, the Holy of Holies. And we went into that room, and I'm looking around, and I said, my goodness. I said, I forgot who I turned to, but I said, is she a teacher? Is she a teacher? Everything was just so organized and right and precise. They said, yeah, she is, in fact. I said, see, I knew it. But, you know, with BB, I remember the first time I met BB, and it was so, you know, it sets the mood whenever you're with your minister friends, and they're talking about, oh, BB's coming back. BB can't wait to see BB. And then BB shows up in the kitchen room with all of us, sits down and eats, and everybody's just excited to see her. And that level of positivity amongst the staff, I mean, is special.
It is.
It is very special. Every day, we pretty much sit down together and eat together.
Yeah.
The ministers and the secretary, you know, and Stephanie, and also at times Robert shows up, and other elders, and I'm like, this is amazing. You know, it's astonishing when you see, you know,
Robert Day.
We love Robert Day.
If you're watching this, come eat lunch with us.
I know you said something one time when you and I were discussing just about the unity that we have amongst us, and you mentioned, you know, David, that unity that Jesus mentioned is possible.
Yeah, it is.
And sometimes, especially if you're a minister who has been by yourself, solo dolo, working a ministry, you can lose sight of the fact that there is a standard and expectation of unity that a church should have, and that it is real, and that it is possible.
Yeah.
And under the right conditions, it's even plausible.
Yeah.
But yeah, you feel that level of positivity and unity here at Oldham Lane, and it's been awesome.
You remember what I told you? I said, you know, because I'm a former coach, I have to use a sports analogy. I said, this is Alabama football. You know, this is a program that's, you know, we've got it down. It's a well-oiled machine. I'm excited about our future. So for just a few moments, talk a little bit about the balance that you guys have with family and work. I don't worry about that anymore. My kids are out of the house. I've been an empty nester for a couple years now. Stephanie just became an empty nester. 4 girls. The last one has left the house. Although she's going to school in town, she is out of the house. So, but BB's just had another child. That's what David was talking about when you were coming back. This became coming off of maternity leave. But 3 little kids. Jake's got 4. Blake's got 3. David's got twin boys that are 15 months old. So talk a little bit about the balance of work and family and how you connect the two, but also how you keep them separate. Steph, talk about it.
Okay. Well, I think what is awesome about this team and awesome about our job is that our work is our family.
Yeah.
And, you know, Chris and I both had kids in Blake's youth group, and I have a daughter in David's college ministry right now, and then Jake has upper elementary kids, and Blake and Brianna have kids that are in our toddler Bible classes and baby Bible classes. And so I think that's what's makes it awesome. We can go to each other's offices and say, hey, as a parent, how do you feel about this, or whatever, and so we can help each other out, and then we can, other people's ministries are our passion also, because our children are involved in it, and
Sure.
so we want everyone to feel successful and to have success in their ministry.
Yeah, that's great. Talking about the overlap just within our own families in ministry. That's neat. Yeah. Anybody else?
I think it's also a blessing just working in a secular environment. There's just, family is not a priority at all. And
Yeah.
so it is nice while working here, I mean, they acknowledge that,
Yeah.
because they're here, they know who our kids are, they know we're here whenever the church building's open, and it's just special to know that you don't really have to shut your family out and work. It's
Yeah.
nice to just have that relationship in that environment.
Well, and when we were going through the COVID stuff back in March, when it was really hitting, and our shepherds, contacted
Yes.
you and just said, hey, you're the first contact, and there's a lot of people stopping by. Let's close the office and you go home.
Yeah.
Work from home, get as much as you can from home if you have to come up here. But they were thinking about you first, and
Yes.
of course you were pregnant at the time too.
Yes.
So,
She's
but I thought
pregnant.
I thought that was great, and that's
Yeah.
kind of how our guys think. They don't hawk over us. They don't make sure that we're always at the office. Of course, if you're never there, you're going to hear about
Yes.
it. But I mean, they don't. They're not the all-seeing eye watching over us, making sure that we dot every I and cross every T. And I think that's helpful.
One of the things that's been beneficial for our family, and I guess it's a little bit more specific to my job, but we've kind of integrated them into the ministry.
That's a good point.
I come to the office and I have my work that I do, but I mean, also a lot of the times when I'm doing my work, they can be with me and a part of that. So that's at least at the stage that we're in is possible and has been special for our family.
Yeah.
So that has helped maintain a little balance. I'll also say this, it's been kind of difficult figuring out, I mean, you have to stop work sometimes.
Yeah.
And I think that is a challenge in church work, is because there's some guilt if you ever turn it off. I mean, our congregation is large enough. There are always people with needs.
Yes.
There are always kids with needs. I mean, you could spend all of your time away from your family doing your work, but that doesn't model to our people what, the priorities that are supposed to be placed on family. So,
Yeah.
I mean, there is a challenge there. I think our elders allow us to draw some boundaries that's important. I mean,
Yeah.
at least one day a week, I really work, and I have to flex it some, and it can't be a rigid rule, but I don't work at
Yep.
least one day a week. I really try not to, and you have to kind of prioritize the things that need to be responded to and the things that can wait. And sometimes that doesn't always mesh with people's expectations.
That's right.
But they have to deal with it.
And saying no is a huge part
It is.
of ministry. And
It is.
I remember when I first came here to interview for the job, they gave me a questionnaire. And one of the questions on the questionnaire was, describe your overall health. And I thought, well, that's interesting, But since that time, I've kind of seen more clearly they were wanting to know they take care of us from that perspective. I've had one of our elders say, you're taking care of yourself. And I said, well, I mean, I'm trying to. I said, I've been working out and all that. I said, I don't like to get up in the morning and do it. And he said, well, then take off and go do it, And so, right in the middle of the afternoon, if you want to go home, I mean, that's part of your ministry as well, is keeping yourself well and healthy. And I thought, okay, yeah, I kind of see where they're coming from with that question, but that was an interesting question from the beginning. What were you going to say, David?
I was going to say this idea of being aware and present of your family, especially as a minister, it's so easy to take your work home. And there is a time where you have to just say, you know what, that's not what's best for my family.
Right.
It's not wise for us to do that. And in fact, I have a friend who's a counselor, and he works with children who have been abused. And I'm saying he works with some extreme cases. And I asked him one time, I said, how do you do it? I see a kid hurting, I get angry. I want justice. That's who I am. But
Right.
before the counseling, I want to see justice. That's a part of who I am.
Yeah.
And he was just like, David, I'm able to turn it off.
Yeah.
I can go to work, I can do what I need to, I can take care of these kids, I can minister to these kids, and then I can go home and I can turn it off. And a part of that is he has hobbies and things that allow him to decompress from the day.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that I think is really important when it comes to family and work balance, which is the impression that dad or mom gives from their work.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's healthy for a balanced. I don't think it's healthy for a balanced family life if dad, and I'm going to use dad, if dad is one person at church and then another person at home.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there is some degree of what's the word I'm looking for? Some degree of being conscious of who you are and how you present. There's appropriateness depending upon whether you're in private or whether you're in public. We understand that.
Sure.
But I know spending time with youth these past several years is that one of the biggest things, especially with preachers, is you see a lot of preacher kids that fall away from the faith. They leave the church. They want nothing to do with it. And when you spend time with them, you find out that from their perspective, especially dad, he was one person in front of people and he was another people at home.
Yeah.
And if you can find a way to maintain your core or who you are fundamentally in both spheres, I think that goes a long way with keeping balance
Absolutely.
in your family,
Absolutely.
in relation to your work.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. So, I mean, as we're kind of wrapping things up here, I want to talk a little bit about, because our relationship is great, but we also have a good relationship with our shepherds. And I think that's highly important for a successful team. And I think oftentimes how we look at the staff or the preacher and the elders is, well, they're the boss. The buck stops with them. And I guess to some degree, there is some truth to that. But our shepherds and our staff look at things, and sometimes it has to be reminded on both sides, because it just does. That's the nature of it. But we look at this as a covenant partnership. I always say they're my elders, but I'm their preacher too, and so that we have a good working relationship like that. Let's talk about for just a few minutes what churches can do, maybe some helpful advice for churches, leadership, how they can value their staff. What are some good things that a church eldership can do to value the staff? I've always said, an eldership, they can look at their staff, their preacher, whoever it is, as an investment or an expense, and they get to decide that. Obviously, one's better than the other. If you see them as an investment, then you're going to do your best to keep them, to want them, to show them they're wanted and all that. If they're just an expense, well, then that's not going to be a healthy relationship. What do y'all think? Not everybody at once.
Well, an expense is something disposable that you run through and then you spend money on it and you're done. An asset or an investment is something that you may put time or money into, but it grows and it cultivates growth. And so, I agree completely that there's a big difference in those two things.
Yes.
So what does it look like to view your staff as an investment or an asset? I think allowing for that work-family balance is an important thing that our shepherds do well. Flexing as pertains to that, recognizing the difficulty of the job and expecting some balance out of that, expecting you to take time for yourself. That's important. You don't run the car ragged. You take care of it, and you change the oil and you change the tires and you do the things that you need to do, instead of just consuming it till it's done and throwing it away.
Exactly.
And that's an important mentality that needs to be adopted. I don't want to take all the time, but I also think involving the staff in decisions that are made, in other words, valuing the input and the job that's done.
Absolutely.
I'm hired to be mindful of and think about youth ministry all day, every day.
Yeah.
And so, if I'm just an event coordinator that's responsible for, being sure that our kids have something to do on Sunday nights, that's an expense. We pay him so that he takes care of this.
Right.
But I mean, really, I feel like I am paid so that I can spend all day, every day thinking about kids and what is best for them. So when there's a decision to be made about kids, I mean, I think my input matters.
Absolutely.
I mean, our shepherds believe my input matters.
Yes.
So I mean, I would encourage church leaders to view their staff that way. You pay them to specialize and think about an area. So you lean on that resource. I mean, you are investing in it, so use it.
I could not agree more. Another coaching analogy, but as a coach, I thought you could always overcoach a kid. I always believed that. And I thought, let an athlete be an athlete. If I've got a good player, I'm not going to try to micromanage him or control him more. I'm going to let him loose and do what he does best, And so again, putting the right people on the right seats on the bus, then let them go to work,
I completely feel the same way. And I have felt that personally from this staff. I remember from the leaders here. I remember when we had our the elders and ministers meeting, not too long ago, and I sat in there, and there came a point where my input was invited into the discussion.
You were surprised by that.
I was surprised. I just looked around. I said, I'm just here to learn. I'm here to learn right now. But I think there are three things, and these were the three things that I looked for whenever I was looking for a new ministry.
Yeah.
And I think that for me, these things spoke to me as saying, you do look at me as an investment. You do care about me. The first thing was shepherds and a ministry team who loves me and my family.
Yeah.
I think that's first and foremost, because the last place I want to be is at a church that doesn't love me, doesn't love my family. They don't have shepherds to take care of my family, because I would love for my boys, as I told y'all, I want my boys, as we grow up, to say, you see those men?
Yeah.
Those are the kind of men you're going to be someday.
Mm-hmm.
Having a ministry team, and all this also comes with benefits to my wife.
Yeah.
Having friends that she could be around, having her children to be around other children. The second thing was leadership that would allow me to grow educationally,
yeah,
and to expand in my thought,
yeah,
which allows for some diversity of thought. And I think that that's beneficial. I know a lot of ministers who they stop their education, and there's a strong correlation between not continuing your studies and your spiritual health.
Yeah.
And then the third thing, and I'll end it here, which is financial stability for my family.
Yeah.
On top of the first two, to know that you're going to care about us,
mm-hmm,
to know that you're going to look out for us financially, you're going to give us what we need in order for me to fulfill this ministry, and at the same time, allow my family to feel like a normal family, to live a normal life, because they're already making sacrifices, but I don't want them to make sacrifices to the point of suffering.
Yeah.
So those would be my three.
Yeah, I agree that money is not the main thing. I mean, studies show this in any workplace. Money is not the most important thing that keeps an employee long term, but it still matters. It has weight. The culture and opportunity for doing your work, fulfilling, satisfying role, that sort of thing matters. But pay matters too.
It does.
And benefits as well.
Mm-hmm.
Whether that be one of the things a church can do is retirement, or things like various different things that churches do. I think an eldership that cares about its people will care about those things as well, while at the same time, that's not the only thing that matters. So if you're getting just sky high pay, but everything else is terrible, well, you're still not going to keep people long term.
Right.
But I think a healthy team between elders, and it is a team approach, and I think fundamentally elders and ministers and staff have to go into this having a proper understanding of the church and how the church operates. So when we see how Paul was supported by various churches in the New Testament, it wasn't an employer-employee relationship. We do that in our minds. We carry that over because that's what we're used to in our setting in our country. Mm-hmm. We're just used to that, and really anywhere. So, but you've got to, you can't you got to not do that when you come to thinking about the church. On paper with the IRS, yes, there's some things like that. But this, as you mentioned, is a covenant relationship. We're entering into a relationship here to do this ministry. Why? Because we're about making and growing disciples. And we believe in partnering with you in this role, you'll help us accomplish that.
Yeah.
And in doing so, we want to do these things to provide for you. So a healthy team is, the elder is going to want to know, what does that minister think about that? We need their input. We talked about that. But also in a healthy team, that minister is going to value what the elder thinks about it.
Yeah.
It might be a particular elder, or we talk about this all the time. There's things we don't make time for this here at Oldham Lane, and it's hard anywhere. It's hard to do. We don't make time for this, but we talk about how we want it. We want time just to talk about a subject.
Yeah.
A ministry thing. How we go about doing a thing or whatever, or whatever. And so that's important, where the ministers and the elders can just dialogue on opinions about that and how to go about doing that thing. And I think that's really important, where both roles are respected and valued, input is valued, and then you come to a conclusion about a thing and you're all on the same page, all on the same team, and you move forward and do that thing together.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think there's probably going to be people that are tuning in, and maybe ministers tuning in thinking, well, all this is great, but I'm at a church of 25 people. I don't have any elders. I have no staff. It's just me. One of my heroes in the faith is a gentleman who lives in Missouri, close to where I came from, who builds houses all day, even when it's really, really cold out, him and his sons, and then he preaches at a little bitty church on the weekends. And so bivocational, if you will, doesn't make hardly any money on the preaching side, has to roof houses to support, himself. But he does it because of his love for ministry, his love for the church, his love for, preaching. And I want those folks to know that may be tuning in that we certainly appreciate your efforts. You guys are heroes, and thank you so much for what you do, because you are the youth minister, you're the children's minister, you're everything at those churches. And so this is one side of things, and maybe somewhat of a brag session because we love what we have here. But if we can be of help to other churches that have a staff, or they're looking, to hire, or they're, maybe even having some issues with staff. And, I know that our shepherds would include themselves in the conversation too, to help anyone that might be, struggling in that, or hopefully we've been an encouragement to some folks too. And
well, I would say that those guys out there are kind of a standard for us to measure ourselves against in this way, in that if I wasn't getting paid, would I still want to do this ministry as just a member in the church? Or if I had to be bivocational, would I still want to do these things?
Yeah.
And so I think we need to remind ourselves of that, because that gets back to, why do we do what we do? Because we ultimately want to make and grow disciples. So that means I would do this for free to the ability that I could, the extent that I could with having to work another job. I would do this for free if I had to. Why? Because I believe in this and I want to do it.
yes.
And I think that's a standard. We need those folks to remind us of that. So if I didn't get to do this at Oldham Lane under all of these conditions and stipulations, then I'm just not going to do it.
Right.
Then you're not. Then you don't need to be doing it.
Your heart's not in the right place.
You shouldn't be doing it then.
Yeah.
You're not the right person to do it. And so those folks out there, and many of us have kind of been in that role at a time before too. And so that we need to be reminded of that.
I agree.
But I also think that, and I agree completely. I think that's a great litmus test for where we're at. But on the other side, those churches who have the resources, to pay a full-time minister, just because that is true doesn't mean that should be the expect. Just because you are willing to do it for free,
Not a cop-out.
doesn't mean. I didn't take a vow of poverty.
Yeah.
I have a responsibility to support my family, and I will. And so, so you think, well, would I be willing to do that? Yes. The kids matter that much. Yes, I would be willing to do that. But I also do have to take care of my family. So, you shouldn't be having to, in some contexts, that is necessary. In others, it is not. And when it is not, that shouldn't be the expectations of the ministers. You do show that you value your staff by paying them a living wage,
right,
so that they can pursue that ministry full time and devote themselves full time to it. And great benefit comes from that.
Yes.
So there's a real balance there that we have to be careful of. I think viewing ministers as if the expectation is you should live and be okay with so much less because this is the Lord's work.
Yep. Yeah.
I disagree with that.
Look at the beauty of that when it's done from a healthy motivation.
Right.
I love this and believe in it and would do it as much as I could at no cost, says the minister, but the elders say, we know, thank you, but we want to pay you to do that.
Yeah. I would like to add to the discussion that in addition to this, the ministers don't need to be taking their ministry for granted.
Yeah.
This idea of getting paid but actually producing lazy work.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Right. That's stealing.
That's stealing.
Mm-hmm.
You're stealing from the Lord and you're stealing from your brothers.
Yeah.
You're stealing from the Lord by way of your brothers. But and in addition to that, because I've been bivocational for the last 9 years,
mm-hmm.
I've had no elders for the last 9 years.
Right.
I've had no ministry team for the last 9 years.
Yeah.
I've worked dishwasher at Chili's, working 10, 11, 12 hours.
Uh-huh.
I've worked 2-3 temp agencies to make it work out. And so I know this discussion very familiarly on a personal level. One thing I want to add is, as a minister, particularly a young guy, not necessarily an older man, but as a young man who's starting a family or has new children, things like that, it's a cost-benefit analysis here.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is being in a church without shepherds, low pay, and you're probably doing all you can to work a job, maybe even two, in order to minister for a particular congregation. You have to weigh you do the costs and the benefits, because I know from my experience, churches that have tended to be smaller have been smaller for 60, 70 years.
Mm-hmm.
Churches that don't have elders have usually been without elders since their inception.
Yeah.
Churches without ministry teams never had one.
Yeah. Right.
And you have to ask, why is that the case? Because I'm considering putting my family or staying in a position where my family likely has no other children to spend time with. My wife likely has no other young ladies to be around. I likely have no close relationships outside of men who I can only see as a grandfather. These are they're more social concerns, but they do have some spiritual ramifications to them.
Yeah.
Ramifications to them. So, it's a cost-benefit analysis from the leadership, which is what we've really been talking about, all the way down to the minister himself.
For sure.
So,
yeah, I can say this: if I lived 1 million lives, I'd want to be a preacher in every single one of them. So, thank you guys for joining me today. This has been fun, and maybe we need the cameras to follow us around a little more so they can see that. We
could do a reality show.
We could do a reality show, so they could see that Stephanie and BB do talk, that they're not always nervous about It's funny what the cameras will do, right? They do it with me. I think they cause me to be a little shyer, believe it or not. But thank you guys for being on here, and thank you for tuning in and or listening, watching, whatever you did. I appreciate you so much. Share the word about the podcast. We're on Spotify, we're on iTunes, Facebook, YouTube. Please let people know about the Dear Church podcast. If anything in the lesson today, the discussion today, or any of the discussions we've had up to this point, you got questions, comments, please send them my way at chris.mccurley@rippleoflight.com. We'd love to hear from you. If we can help you in any way, if you have a specific question for any one of our staff members, then we'll make sure that they get it as well. Just thank you so much. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. Sincerely, Chris.